seen you since the last courting season. I've heard there's been quite a raunchy runch happening already over on the Dorian. Have you not heard of Dorian before? Dorian's a storytelling app which is currently actually celebrating its Bridgerton coming out season. There's a whole new array of gorgeous outfits where you can dress your characters up and tell a story in your own form. I'm actually telling my own Olympian version of Bridgerton over on there, focusing around a couple of goddess and goddesses, primarily Athena, the one goddess who doesn't want to fall in love with anyone and refuses to matchmake with anyone. Oh, speaking of which, actually, if you're an artist, did you know that Dorian's updated its app? So you can now upload your own character artwork. So if you have a story that you want to share with the world and you want your characters to look exactly how you describe them, you can now upload your own artwork or your friend's artwork if they want to draw for you over on Dorian, and the whole world can see your characters. I don't know if you've heard, but Dorian is a fantastic way to actually earn money as a writer. You write little episodes of your stories, you can stream them, and your fans will actually donate to you, and you can gain a community with everyone and earn an audience and earn a fan base for your stories. So whatever type of writer you are, whether you're romance, mystery, thriller, etc., crime writers in fact, you can go over to Dorian, write your stories up, gain an audience and a fan base, and earn money from your writing. And now you can upload your own artwork, so the platform is basically yours to make your own. Anyway, if you want to join me over on there, I'll be streaming on Fridays and Sundays at these particular times. It'd be lovely to have you over, and we can explore my new Athena story together in our new Bridgerton style. And if you have any other kind of Bridgerton story, you should give it a go. I'll leave my link down below for you to use. Thank you, Dorian, for sponsoring this video. And now, let's get on with it, shall we? Well, hello everyone and welcome to my library. If you're new here, hello, my name is Chinsia, and if you're not new here and you're my lovely regulars, hi, how are you? I hope you're doing splendidly. So I can only apologise, my voice sounds very different than usual. It's primarily, I think anyway, I can't hear myself. I have laryngitis, I'm in the recovery stage now. I completely lost my voice for a few days last week, to the relief of the entire world I believe, but I'm all very stuffed up. My throat still hurts quite a lot, so I can only apologise now if I sound a bit off, a bit deeper, bit squeakier, bit snottier, I don't know. Everyone has something to say about my voice, so I might as well point it out anyway. Today I thought it'd be quite fun to look at almost a kind of brief history and just have a general chat about storytelling, oral storytelling, the community of storytelling, because we've been discussing a lot of very similar storytelling techniques on the past weeks. I've talked a lot about, obviously, this video is sponsored by Dorian, which is a storytelling platform. You live stream telling stories to people, you read out episodes, and again, it's a community experience. But also last week, we discussed about audiobooks. I've also talked about gaming and gaming storytelling and how we learn through this. And I've been thinking a lot in my head about the differences between legitimate forms of storytelling, and I say legitimate in terms of quote-unquote legitimate, forms of storytelling that are dismissed, which actually go back to ancient traditions in nature, and communal storytelling, and why people enjoy communal storytelling. Why do we enjoy being read aloud to, whether it's through an audiobook, whether we're watching a streamer, with a game, watching the game play through, or enjoy reading groups, listening to people read out loud. I've done several videos where I read a short story out loud on YouTube and whether they enjoy that, and why there is legitimacy between certain types of storytelling and not. So let me break that down. What do I mean by that? If we're looking at oral storytelling, there are obviously several different types of oral storytelling today that didn't exist in ancient times, but they derive from the tradition of, and each of them have their own category of classing of legitimacy. So we have the quote-unquote contentious types of legitimate storytelling. Is not classed as high art, is not classed as, worthy of investment. This goes into sometimes audiobooks. Some people are snotty towards people who listen to audiobooks and go, that's not really reading. Again, it's part of oral tradition, however, so it fits from the tradition of oral storytelling. However, some people don't find them legitimate. They don't enjoy the practice of audiobooks. Same goes for gaming and streaming. People don't find games. Parents will tell off their children for engaging in games, despite there being an incredible, complex, detailed version of storytelling that's taking place within their gaming community. but they're seen as less legitimate because they're not quote-unquote high art. Yet, there are other forms of oral storytelling that are seen as high art. We have the theatre as a prime example. Many films are also seen as high art, legitimate storytelling, but then you have other films and television series which are seen as illegitimate, trashy quote-unquote storytelling, not real storytelling, etc. Despite them having the same media, but theatre is seen as very high art, very legitimate storytelling. But if one were to listen to a play production on an audiobook, they'd be seen as, I don't know, less legitimate, as rather than someone who pays to go to the theatre to see actors perform it, because there's no visual element to it, it's seen as lesser than. So a radio play production is seen as lesser than going to the theatre and watching that play take place, but they are still oral storytelling. And then you have places like the opera as well as oral storytelling, mostly obviously not in the same language unless you speak like Latin or Italian and you're watching this opera take place in front of you, then it's not normally in your language, but you're going by translation and you're going by the threat. So I've set the stage already. We have different forms. All of this is oral storytelling. Television, film, games, streaming of games, audiobooks, theatre, opera, etc. But they're classified in different cases, despite them being the same thing. High art, low art, what counts as reading, what doesn't count as reading, what counts as actually engaging in culture, what doesn't count as engaging in culture, and what's seen as more a gamification of a story, and what's seen as legitimate intellectual engagement with a story. It's all on a spectrum, despite it all being part of the same theme, oral storytelling. You see, all this discussion is relevant because how storytelling, especially oral storytelling, has evolved reflects the evolution of human communication and learning techniques. And people who are dismissive are certain ones are kind of overlooking the fact that we're even here and performing stories and consuming stories in this way is an evolution of communication and learning techniques. And to dismiss certain platforms or certain ways of consuming stories is in of itself naive, to say the least. They are still legitimate forms of storytelling because according to the National Storytelling Network, storytelling is the interactive art of using words and actions to reveal the elements and images of a story whilst encouraging the listener's imagination. All these versions of storytelling are legitimate. Some may engage your imagination more than others, and they may work better for you and some not, but they are still all forms of legitimate versions of oral storytelling. But oral storytelling, obviously, people like to say it's the earliest form of storytelling. Hard to decipher. We know storytelling really came around through cave art, illustrated cave art. The oldest story that we know to date is actually a cave painting of a pig and a buffalo hunt in the Indonesian island Sulawesi. And it's a story which archaeologists believe is over 44,000 years old. That's the oldest story known to man. The story stretches across a 4.5 metre or 14.8 foot section of a rock wall, and it's 3 meters or 9.8 feet above the floor of a hard-to-reach upper chamber of a site called Liang Bulu Singpong 4. Probably didn't pronounce that correctly, but it's really hard to get. I mean, I put the picture in. Look how hard that is to get to. The only reason they discovered it was because when they were exploring this area, they went, that kind of looks like an entrance. The way that this cave is positioned and how the entrance is, they believe that is actually a sacred site that people would travel to. You're probably wondering, I was wondering actually, how did they know how old a story is? You know, it's painted on the wall. How old do you know that is? Well, I looked it up and here it is. Liang Bulu Singpong 4 is actually a living cave, and it's still being reshaped by flowing water. And layers of rock have begun to grow over the painting in spots of it. The minerals forming those layers include small traces of uranium, which over time decays into thorium-230. Now, unlike the uranium, the thorium isn't water-soluble and can only get into the rock via decay. So by measuring the ratio of uranium-234 to thorium-230 in the rock, archaeologists could tell how recently the rock layer formed, and thus they determined deposits had been slowly growing over the hunting mural. Now, we know all about cave art. Cave art has been uncovered around the world over the past century, and outside of the oral tradition, this is the oldest form of storytelling that we know that came to be. It was from cave art that oral story evolved out of. You see, before the invention of writing, early human societies stored and transferred information orally through speaking, listening, and remembering. And without any devices to record what was said, ancient oral communication was entirely transient, which created a dynamic equilibrium of ancient stories that was simultaneously altered and changed according to personal interpretation and circumstances, whilst maintaining faithfulness to the tradition from which they originated. Scholars of oral tradition have largely concluded that this dynamic was created because storytellers didn't memorize authoritative text per se, but they learned key elements of a story, and they used different mnemonic devices such as rhyme, cadence, and repetition to aid and recall and add meaning as they were performing it. It's funny how I still get comments today from people, particularly as someone who specializes in researching classical retellings, primarily in today's culture, how they say it's basically bastardization of the ancient texts. They're like, oh, one comment even said, it's been original for thousands of years and now all these modern writers are ruining it. To which I said, well, no. There's no such thing as an original ancient text. Every version of ancient mythology, whether it's Greek, Roman, Indian, every ancient resource that we have is a retelling of an oral resource, and it won't be the exact oral, the original creator of that oral tradition. And ever since, it has been constantly retold. I mean, the idea that someone thought everyone's bastardizing the ancient text by retelling them in their own modern version. Have you not heard of Romeo and Juliet? That's Pyramus and Thisbe. Have you not heard of Shakespeare? He basically recreated all of the myths into place. Like, everyone has recreated ancient texts and ancient mythologies into retellings over hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years. And every myth and story that we have is a retelling of another story. There is no such original myth. There is no such original documentation. We will never have access to oral tradition. And what's most important about all of this was that the oral tradition was part of a communal storytelling. They were essential for telling stories amongst one another. It was uniting. People came together to hear these stories, to learn stuff about their histories, their religions, their mythologies, their folklore. They learned morals and lessons through the storytelling that they were told. They were engaged with their imagination. It was an essential, crucial part of human social development. Oral storytelling, and with that, community storytelling, communal storytelling, was a fundamental part of human social development. The structure and fabric of society were built through oral storytelling that were told to communities. So the idea of dismissing oral storytelling today, to me, seems like a naive dismissal of what was actually the foundation of society as we know it today. We wouldn't be here without the cultures that were developed through oral storytelling. They seem like banal things to most people. They're just stories. But stories are how we got here today. We wouldn't lack this culture. There wouldn't be religions. There wouldn't be laws. There wouldn't be social standings. There wouldn't be morality had there not been oral storytellings. In their book, Understanding Media, renowned communications theorist Marshall McLuhan developed the idea that changes in modes of communication, such as the shift from orality to literacy, led to corresponding changes in values and beliefs of given society, because any change in how people transmit information subsequently impacts the distribution of power, systems of belief, and the way people look at the world. So people may dismiss certain forms of storytelling today, but at the end of the day, actually, they are significant indicators on how information is being transmitted and distributed. And the fact that a way a story can be told impacts distribution of power, systems of belief, to me, shows you how powerful stories are, and they shouldn't be dismissed, and they shouldn't be negated to lesser than. Storytelling is evolving, and that should be celebrated. The oral traditionalists who told stories several thousand years ago, millennia ago, could never have imagined how storytelling would be today, how significant and important their stories were to the construct of us as a society. And regardless of your society, whatever society, societies as a whole, cultures as a whole, they were just telling stories, and look how much that changed the world. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you also for Dorian for sponsoring this video. And just to let you know, I'll be streaming on Dorian every Friday and Sundays. Here are my streaming times if you're familiar with them. Thank you for making me laugh. I'm sorry that my voice is really starting to hurt by the end of this video, so I'm going to wrap it up as quickly as possible. But thank you so much again for watching my video. And if you have any requests for other videos, please leave them down below, and I will see you soon for another video. And remember, books save lives, so keep reading.